CREA, the Carbon Removals India Association. I've got Luis de Andrade from TELUS, which is a Brazilian biochar producer, and I've got Trevor Hutchins from a UK association called the Association of Renewable Energy and Clean Technology. So I'll now hand over to these guys to introduce themselves. Perhaps, guys, if you could give us an opening insight on your background, either in scaling biochar or in scaling other technologies. So we'll start with you, Asitaba.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for the introduction, and thanks CDR30 for organizing this important panel discussion. So I lead CREA, which is the Carbon Removal India Alliance, which is basically the industry consortium for all tech-based permanent CDR pathways, biochar, and also enhanced rock weathering and marine CDR and DAX and VEX. We have about 21 members, out of which majority are biochar and ERW companies, which shows that India is poised more towards ag-based CDR solutions because of the synergy with the agriculture system that prevails in the country. And so we try to convene everybody together and try to develop traction around policy, investment, and other ecosystem enablers which can take CDR at a much faster scale. I will talk about how we are doing it later on. Thank you.
So I think one of the things that I'm most grateful for to people like yourself and Asitaba is how you bring together one narrative on things like biochar, where there may be some confusing science, but to have one narrative that is perpetuated by bodies like yourself is fantastic. So thank you for your work doing that. Luis.
Hello everyone, I'm Luis Andrade. I am founder and CEO of TELUS. We are a biochar producer based in Brazil. I would like to take the opportunity of the mic also to congratulate Health Corps for the superb job with the guys. These unique ribs. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And Trevor, welcome.
Hi everyone, Trevor Hutchins. I'm the Chief Executive of the UK's Renewable Energy Trade Body. We've got about 400 businesses from across the value chain, including a lot that operate in the bioenergy space. And all of which are getting very excited around the prospect of scaling some of these negative CDR, in the UK we call GGRs, greenhouse gas removals. We're talking about the same thing here, the ability to remove carbon from our atmosphere, lock it away and generate negative emissions. And that will include technologies from biochar, but also BECCS, the bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. And we're also looking at plants like energy from waste plants, where half of what they are burning to generate electricity is from organic sources, and so therefore can generate negative emissions. And also in the UK, we are scaling biomethane, a lot from food waste, but also crop waste, and the ability to generate a clean gas, but also again to generate negative emissions, because when you upgrade biogas to biomethane you can suck out the carbon. So multiple technologies in this area, a really big important prospect in the UK, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're going about it in a minute.
Perfect, thank you Trevor. So I think we'll open up today's conversation by talking about the imperative for that kind of investment. So last week, Johan Rockström, who's the Chief Scientific Advisor to COP30 presidency, warned that we needed to remove 10 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year just to limit global heating to 1.7 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So this is a clear message of the need to scale global CDR. The scale of carbon removal is enormous, and the only way that we'll achieve it is by attracting mainstream private investment and by bringing more carbon credit buyers to the market. Climate finance alone isn't enough. We're about to open our UK biochar facility, Althea Earth, the country's largest when it reaches full capacity in 2027, and it will play a significant role in scaling the biochar industry in both the UK and Europe. Getting to this point was a masterclass in what investors and buyers really care about. Our investors weren't focused on how much biochar we could produce or even how much carbon we could capture. They weren't dazzled by the number of carbon credits that we could generate. What mattered to them was simple. What are the yields? How predictable are the returns? And how much capital is needed to scale into a commercially viable money-making operation? For institutional investors, it's not about the climate story, it's about the business case. Our main takeaway from this is the need to shift our language. Yes, biochar is exciting, and technology in general is innovative, and the climate potential is huge. But if we want to unlock serious capital inflows, we have to start talking like financiers, not like climate advocates. Investors are looking for the same things that they look for in any infrastructure asset: scale, predictability, risk mitigation, and clear regulatory pathways. They want boring, not breakthrough. They want to know that this is a safe and repeatable investment. Carbon credit buyers are looking for a similar thing: a de-risk project that fits in with their portfolio and guarantees their carbon removal. If we want carbon removal to meet this 10 billion tonne goal, then we need to appeal to audiences who will get us there. And that starts with understanding and speaking the language of investors and buyers, which is explored in the white paper, the Biochar Blueprint. So I'm going to start with a question for you, Asitaba. So biochar developers in India have secured some major offtake deals from big corporate buyers. What have the main learnings been from this process about what investors need to see to shift from pilot to large-scale deployment?
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a good question. Now, when we talk about need for capital, it's obvious for any industry to grow, any business to grow, you need capital to be coming in. And in this case, there can be three sources of capital. One is, of course, private capital. One could be philanthropic capital, like Mati Carbon, X-Prize, an Indian company for philanthropic capital. And then there could be public capital, either government's money coming in direct purchase of CDR credit or giving some incentives, which makes the business more viable. So that's the first thing we need to understand, that there are three categories of finance when we talk about not just private capital. In case of private capital, there are two ways. One is offtake agreements by large companies who are doing it for their own offsetting and net zero purposes. And it could be VC or PE investment, which is purely driven by future profitability and ROI, right? And some of the Indian companies have got future purchase, advanced purchase agreements, and have been able to raise capital from the VC and PE segment also. But I must say that this is not easy. I don't believe any industry can grow with only 50 global offtake buyers, out of which the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 is 90% of the market, and the number 1 is 80% of the market. This is not a solution for any industry to grow. This is not how gigaton scale can be achieved. So obviously the base has to increase. Many more people have to buy credits, not just for offsetting but also for insetting, for which certain things have to happen. The same logic goes for private VC and PE investors. They are not sure about this aspect itself, whether CDR can grow with 50 buyers. They want to see the bigger potential, and also some are concerned about MRV, whether the MRV is perfect or there are some improvements possible. So in this situation, and it is nothing unique about CDR, any new industry goes through this phase. When renewable energy started, the first investor or the first operator which put up the first windmill or the solar plant, didn't have a cakewalk, right? It took 25 years for renewable energy to reach today's level. So there is no magic solution. Things are going to happen slowly. But I think there is a big role that blended finance can play, particularly to cover some of the initial risks for which private capital is not ready to invest. Till the risks come down and private capital flows more readily, there is a big role that philanthropic capital, including private philanthropies like X-Prize and MDBs, multilateral development banks like World Bank and others can play. We are ourselves talking to World Bank in India to see whether this can be piloted in their projects which are more land-based. So I think with intelligent combination of private, public and philanthropic capital and blended finance is the best way to do this. I think the finance problem can be at least addressed well.
Thanks, Asitaba. really, really powerful message as well. Like, don't panic, all markets go through this process. Louise, I'm going to come to you. So scaling biochar in emerging economies comes with challenges around consistency of technology and varying cost. How have you addressed these to make the business model bankable for you?
Interesting question. Two pillars come to my mind. First, I would say align from ground zero the design of your project with the higher integrity standards. And special the parallel system. I would say that going with parallel systems that are vetted by the standards are imperative. In my case, for instance, I'm going to be certified with Pure, and I decide to go with Haiti. So I think this is this risk very much the perspective from the investors and the buyers. Technical problems are a big issue in this sector. Second, the second pillar I would say relates to the fact that we didn't have a track record before this is our first plant, so we decided to build with our own capital. By doing so, we'll be in a better position to raise money from institutional investors when we have the track record. Yeah, I believe that that would be my first two points in mind.
Sorry, we have one road microphone. So thank you, Louise. And then Trevor, just to come to you. So you're head of the UK's largest renewables trade body. What parallels do you see between biochar and other clean technologies in attracting mainstream investment?
Yeah, it's a really important question. In the UK, and I think this is applicable globally, isn't it? Having that, I think you called it boring, having that underpinning regulatory and policy landscape to give the investor confidence. What does that mean in practice? Well, in the UK, we've got our pathways out to our net zero target. So we've got a net zero target by 2050. It's translated here to an NDC that we announced in Baku last year. And what that has done has immediately given confidence into the market that those pathways include CDRs. We're not going to get to our targets, legally binding targets, without significant quantities of CDR. And in our pathway, the bulk of that is going to be through BECS and through some DACs, but also other technologies can play. And I think there's a real challenge for biochar to say how far can you play into that pathway in the UK. It'll be the same in other countries. But that is a clear signal, and then you've got to really understand the policy and regulatory landscape to help drive both the demand of that and the supply side. And on the demand side, one of the key things I think that we all face is that challenge around sustainability of the feedstock. You know, these are organic resources, and we are constantly needing to have a strong sustainability framework, a strong monitoring, verification, reporting framework to go with that, strong enforcement behind it, credibility, because investors, they do look at this thing that comes into your risk profile. They don't want to be, investing in something that is proven to be, unsustainable, forestry, or whatever it might be. So that is super, super important. But we've also looked to government to provide a more sustainable route to market by co-investing, by bringing through different financial instruments that can be co-invested with, both from a government side of things, but also from the private sector. And I think that government skin in the game sends a really clear message to the private sector that this country is serious about it, and actually it helps with your risk profile.
Absolutely, and definitely looking around the room, seeing a number of biochar developers, we certainly take the challenge of bringing it to be a mainstream investable asset like those other technologies that you mentioned. We're very fortunate that the panel is today very diverse. We've got 3 different continents represented. So I want to take time to talk about some regional pathways, because biochar markets vary widely across regions. In Europe and the US, carbon credits typically require biochar to be sold to an end user for application. In contrast, many of the global south markets, the end product is distributed for free, creating a very different economic dynamic. This means that as well as building a market for biochar carbon credits in the global north, we also need to build a market for biochar as a physical product in industries like agriculture, horticulture and construction. So at Healthier Earth, we've been actively working with partners on this. Our parent company, Pure DC, which is a UK-based data center company, is building one of the world's largest living walls around its London data center, and we're working with living wall specialist Virotopia to research how biochar can reduce water usage in living walls when applied to the substrates. Initial results have been fantastically promising, showing that water reduction could reach up to 60% year-round. So the biochar market, as I've described, is highly fragmented regionally, let alone globally. Small projects, differing durability assumptions, conflicting methodologies, and a patchwork of verification standards. And so this significantly impacts the investment potential of biochar projects. And building investor and buyer confidence is absolutely essential if we want to scale this market. So that means putting risk mitigation front and center of the conversation. So in order to de-risk biochar, we need to focus on mechanisms like aggregation platforms, blended finance, as Asitava mentioned, insurance and standardization of pathways, which is something else we talk about in our white paper, the Biochar Blueprint. But this isn't uncharted territory. We've seen this playbook before. It's how renewables move from fringe environmental tech to mainstream infrastructure investment. So this is where I'm going to come back to you. So in India, biochar is often distributed freely to farmers. How does this economic model affect your approach to market development?
Hello, yeah. This is a question close to my heart, and all our work in Kriya is monetizing the co-benefits, as we call it. So I can talk a lot about why and how to do that. First of all, I think everybody in this room are aware of the co-benefits of biochar in this particular case, and similarly for rock weathering. So biochar can be, I think, approved ways of using either in agriculture or in construction material, as per the global standards, Euro and isometric. So let's talk more about the agriculture, which is a much bigger opportunity than construction industry. So we all know that biochar helps improving soil, neutralizing soil acidity, obviously improve soil organic carbon, holds more water for longer time, reduces NO2 and methane emission from agriculture as a result of all that stuff. So it's a solid soil amendment product, and if biochar is mixed with compost, organic compost, 1:1 proportional, it can become a biofertilizer, which can be kind of a substitute, not a 100% substitute, but some part of chemical fertilizer like urea and others can be substituted. So this is the story. Now, while therefore biochar companies are not selling the product, if it has use to the farmer, why the hell are they not selling it? Why are they giving it for free? There are 2 reasons, very clear. One is, it is not the business of biochar companies to distribute an agriculture input product. It's an FMCG business. It is the domain of the Syngentas and Bayers and other agribusiness companies whose model is to make a product, brand a product, distribute it, and mind you, in India and global south, we are talking about 120 million smallholder farmers. These are not the big farmers of Brazil. Their average farm holding is 2 hectares, right? So you imagine how complicated it is, distribution chain you have to be able to reach the farmer. Okay, so that's number one reason why they are not selling. And secondly, the product is not approved or recognized by the government. Every agriculture input anywhere in the world is regulated, and you have to be licensed and certified to be able to use it. And the primary reason is to protect the interest of the farmer. Otherwise, some Tom, Dick and Harry or some roadside operator can sell something which looks like biochar, but maybe it's not biochar, and who's going to take the responsibility? Government's role to say that this is the specification of biochar, this is the mode of application, this ton per hectare has to be applied at this point of time, once in 2 years or whatever it is. So that is missing because that stage has not come, at least in India, where it is part of government's agriculture input regulatory system. But my theory of change is very simple, and we are working towards government acknowledgement and specifications and also subsidies initially. I won't say subsidy forever, but some kind of a market development assistance, purely to give the farmer more confidence. Healthier earth or telling a farmer is one thing, and the government of a country telling the farmer use biochar enhanced biofertilizer, completely different thing. So that can lead to a large scale demand when large agribusiness companies will come into biochar production, not offtake, not purchase on the supply side. They have the capability, they have the reason to do that, to add this product in their portfolio. As a result, the biochar business will be much more viable financially. This is my theory of change. I'm not saying that I have a forecaster or a switch because of which the cost of carbon credit sale will come down from $100 or maybe $50 or whatever dollars. Take that, three companies buying 90%, that SKU go. There is no reason why top 20 Indian corporates will not buy removal credit at a $50 per ton price. They're ready to do it. But first the price has to come down. And my theory of change is this is how the price will come down and the market is going to expand. I am talking about only with one objective, not for any particular developer, but how to go to gigaton scale, how to move from pilot scale to gigaton scale. So this is how it will move to gigaton scale, otherwise it will remain small pilots by small companies in small scale.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. And to you, Luis, given Telus's roots in Brazil and expansion to other markets, what regional differences in farmer adoption or indeed institutional support have been most surprising to you?
I would say that I was caught by surprise when the farmers actually were very much interested in the concept of biochar. Biochar is a novelty to Brazil still. But I must say that we feel the responsibility to build this industry, and I will not sell in the first year. I will devote all my biochar to large-scale field trials. Different crops, different soil. We have a multitude of soils in Brazil. Different application rates, that's imperative. If I recommend the wrong application rate, results could be disastrous. And we are very aware we have only one chance. Farmers in general are very conservative, and they must be. Sometimes their livelihood depends on that. So it's a huge responsibility that we carry, so we cannot live by chance the results.
Thank you, Luis. And Trevor, on the same topic, you've got vast experience across a number of sectors. So what can biochar industry learn from the transition that, say, renewables has made over the past 20 years?
Yeah, I think let me just start by just reinforcing this integrity point, actually, because I think I do see CDRs and I refer to them as GGRs in the UK. They have got the potential to de-risk some of the challenges that we've seen, particularly in the voluntary carbon market, around integrity. And I think these has got to be underpinned through the governance and market assurance and regulatory regime in order to make sure that the investors have got absolute confidence that what they are buying is genuinely delivering a carbon removal and it can attract a higher premium in the market. And to your point, it can be scalable. And I think that there you go to your question, where if we look at where we're focusing in the UK, we are focusing on things like bioenergy with carbon capture and storage because it is scalable. And I think the one thing that I see as a distinction between technologies like BECCS and perhaps biochar is that the BECCS example, there are co-benefits. There are co-benefits of producing clean, low carbon or carbon neutral electricity and heat through biomass burning power stations. As long as it's from sustainable sources and we've got the governance right, that is legitimate way of generating renewable energy, and it's got a very high value service to our energy system because it's molecules and it can be used to balance the grid when we have other intermittent renewables on our grid. You're combining that then with then carbon capture and storage and then generating GGRs. And so the value chain is slightly perhaps longer than maybe for other technologies. And I think that is why in some of these areas, the ability to attract investment and scale is slightly different in the BECS case because of those co-benefits that we can see. And I just think that is led to quite a push now on having BECS in the UK as a scalable.
Thank you, Trevor. So, listen, on paper, Biochar looks like a business with huge potential. It offers multiple revenue streams and has many use cases as a product, but also the sector is highly fragmented. Every region, as we've heard, is learning in isolation, and that's slowing us down, quite frankly. If we want to scale globally, then we need to start acting like a single connected industry. Right now, there's no universal playbook. There's no standards, certification, and even basic definitions vary from country to country, which is ironic with the UK introducing GGR as a terminology this week. That creates confusion for buyers, it creates confusion for investors and developers, and it's holding back mainstream investment. That's why we created the Biochar Blueprint, our white paper, a product of collaboration itself to support developers in the wider industry. When projects align with robust, internationally recognised standards like Bureau.Earth or Carbon Standards International, it builds trust and, more importantly, it unlocks capital. Investors want to know that a biochar credit in Brazil is the same as one in the UK. That's why sharing best practice and learning from each other is so essential. When we pool knowledge, technology choices, MRV systems and contract structures, everybody moves faster and avoids costly mistakes. This is especially true when it comes to de-risking. Aggregating smaller projects under common platforms or intermediaries spreads risk and helps new entrants to the market access finance. If we want biochar to be a global carbon and climate solution, we need to move from artisanal to industrial scale by aligning on standards, sharing knowledge, and building partnerships that cross both borders and sectors. So I'm going to come to you, Asitava. What's the best example of collaboration that you've seen across the industry in India?
Absolutely important. Yeah, it's absolutely important to have collaboration, and the very fact that KRIA exists in India with 21 members proves that there is collaboration. And as an example, I mean, there are lots of, and you also talked about a common narrative building, which is what we are doing, and there are lots of white papers and policy papers which are there on KRIA's website, which is a joint effort by all of us. But I'll give two specific examples which will be perhaps a good learning for other countries. One is, thank you, Beatrice. One is initiative which KRIA has started with the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, which is the government-owned research agency, which is Embrapa's counterpart, one of the largest in the world in terms of budget and infrastructure. So KRIA and ICAR has started a field study in a limited manner with four crops, two different agroclimatic zones for 2 seasons, where biochar and also rock weathering in this case separately will be supplied by 7 of our member companies to ICAR. And ICAR is of course by Indian Council of Agriculture, as I said. They are going to test this in their own campuses and over a period of time measure all the co-benefits that we talk about: carbon sequestration, water holding, NO2 emission reduction, soil organic carbon improvement, and so on and so forth. So we believe this is one of the first time industry association is joining hands with the government agency to establish the co-benefit in a more credible manner, build the evidence, which will lead to the policy push that I just talked about. And the second one is thanks to Mr. Chris Neidel, who's standing there. The new global alliance has been launched on Saturday called the Global Carbon Harvest Alliance, which is led by Brazil, but the co-founding members are India and Kenya. And the focus is on SOC, biochar and rock weathering. This is an intergovernment collaboration supported by CGIAR, the UN body for agriculture research, and with support from XPRIZE and many other institutions. So it is my job to ensure that it gets kicked off, and this can really be game changer in terms of sharing knowledge, data between countries at that level, so that the evidence building which you talked about, Trevor, can be much faster and more reliable. Thank you.
That's right. And Luis, TELUS has collaborated with others, both in Brazil and the wider global industry, to reach its global scale. Can you tell us how you've achieved that?
Could you repeat the last part?
So you collaborated with others in both Brazil and the wider global industry to reach your current scale today?
I think from the very beginning of our journey, we relied on partnerships and collaborations, from technical experts to research partners. For every point of our journey is imperative, still now. And to your point, we are constantly in contact with other biochar producers. It saved me so much resources and time being in contact with other biochar producers worldwide. We are constant with video calls. We are learning with each other. The goal is for no one making the same mistake twice. On that point, we are actually there's an effort building an association for the Latin America biochar producers, inspired by your efforts. Congratulate, I take the opportunity. It's a great vision, and it's imperative. We are all together in this journey, and if one fall, we all receive the impact.
Thank you, Luis. And Trevor, Raya brings together more than 500 companies across clean tech. How can we replicate this kind of collaboration in the biochar industry, both to harmonise standards, but also to share know-how, as Luis and Mrs. talked about?
Yeah, well, come and join us. That'll be
Absolutely.
the first thing. But look, I was just counting, I don't know if people online won't be able to see this, but across the back wall here, there's 16 different CDR technologies, and that's probably not all of them. And you're potentially all fighting for airtime with policymakers, with investors, with the media who might be sort of wanting to tell your story. And so I think it is hugely important to organise the industry to act as a single powerful voice, to remind government decision makers that they're not going to get to their own targets without this industry beginning to scale, to have the evidence that demonstrates the efficacy of it with the ability to deliver, a scalable industry, the evidence of the carbon cycle that you need to win that argument on. And so things like your white paper that you talked about at the beginning, that is all part of this process. But it is a slog because you've got to make your case. And there are lots of other technologies that are very willing to say that they've got a better solution, a more investable solution, a more deliverable solution. And so really the only way is to bring together those alliances into a single powerful voice.
And do you think there's a risk that, because as you said, you've got to raise your voice above the other technologies, and is there a risk that these technologies crowd each other out when actually we need all of them to come to fruition, or as many as possible?
We do need pretty much all of them. There's no doubt about that, and particularly in the whole CDR space, which is relatively immature. And we don't know which of these technologies actually is going to win out. So we always very much encourage government to take a, if you like, technology agnostic. And if your technology is the best because it is deliverable, investable, it's got the market assurance behind it, you've got the evidence to win your argument, then there's no reason why your technology will not win out. But I think it is the case that we need all of this. But we know globally, hydrogen has been a technology that was very much the answer to many of our problems. And actually, we know now that hydrogen is going to be an answer to only a few of our problems. And so I think we need to go down that route where firm, evidenced argument of your investability, your deployability, your scalability, that's the way to win the argument here, because there's too many promises in technologies that haven't delivered, and I think it's incumbent just to demonstrate that you really here are serious players and can deliver a solution.
I can see a fair bit of nodding in the audience, so I'm keen to get on to Q&A as quickly as possible. So I think we'll close out. Maybe we'll stick with you to start, Trevor. One question for you all is, if you could make one change to accelerate Biochar's transformation into a global industrial sector, what would that be?
I would repeat what I said. You have got to win the argument on the scalability of this.
Thank you. And Louise?
I will talk through the perspective of Biochar producer. I would say technology maturity. As I mentioned earlier, the technology of producing biochar has been there for a long time, but systems that comply with the high standards are not many. And trying to get systems that are not compliant retrofitted, it's a recipe for at least delays, if not worse. So I would emphasize that getting systems that were vetted by high standards. For instance, in my case, I'm certified with Purware and using High-Chief, which is vetted. It's also saved a lot of time and resources for us.
Hello, yeah. Many things, what Trevor and Louise talked about, technology and infrastructure, but I would say bringing the two big daddies in the game, government and the big corporates, is absolutely critical to make biochar a $1 billion or $1 trillion industry like fertilizer or agrochemical or seed or whatever it is. I'm looking at it from an agriculture solution. And when I say bringing government, doesn't mean that government will either invest directly or buy credit, but they can provide facilitating policies. Just like I talked about acknowledging biochar application of the soil amendment or organic fertilizer, and then big corporates either producing or buying. Only these two things are absolute essential for this industry to grow from small scale to bigger scale.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our panelists for some fantastic insights. I'm going to open the floor now, so have we got anybody that wants to start us off with a question?
Mr. Sen, I heard you say that you like to have half compost, half biochar to fertilize the field. But you said, oh, but we still need to add additional fertilizer to the crop. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And would it also be possible not to have that additional fertilizer to have a completely holistic solution?
You're absolutely right. I think ideally for getting carbon removal credit, you are supposed to apply it not with fertilizer on a standalone basis, but I believe in the practical situation. I myself, before my role in Korea, I was leading agrochemical industry association in India, global crop life. A lot of NGOs talked about completely removing chemical fertilizers and agrochemicals from application of in the world. But that is impractical. Things which have been used for centuries and millennium, and there is an established practice, and the farmer, they are not going to take risks overnight to change over from one practice to another. It is very difficult. I believe Sri Lanka tried to do that, and it was a complete failure. I mean, some of you can read it. It's not a very old story, a few years back. So we believe that, and it is more ironical because India, imports $33 billion of fertilizer from outside. It's a cash outflow for the country, and it is highly subsidized. So our taxpayers' money is actually going for chemical fertilizer usage. Nobody wants that. But this transition is going to happen from chemical to bio. not just for biochar, for a lot of other bio inputs slowly, not overnight. So I would say that the practical solution would be to use both chemical and organic fertilizers in some kind of a sequence so that there is a slow phase over rather than an overnight transition. But we can argue over that later on.
Can I just add to that excellent answer and give you an example in the UK where through scaling anaerobic digestion as a way of generating a biomethane, green gas, one of the byproducts of that is a biofertilizer, and that is a really positive byproduct of scaling up what is at the moment a subscale industry. It's a bit like biochar, and we are scaling that up, and one of the revenue streams and one of the arguments as to why this is a good thing to do is the biofertilizer that comes out the back end of it, offsetting chemical fertilizers which are generally imported. So again, it's that win-win story that we need to build on for biochar. And I just wanted to jump in as well because I wanted to offer my apologies that I need to jump into another meeting now. So Sam, thank you very much for hosting us, and good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trevor. Louise, did you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
I think they covered very well.
Perfect. Any other questions in the audience?
Thank you. My name's Thomas Howard. I'm one of the co-founders of Mashmates, which is one of your member institutions, Biochar. And I'm also starting up another company now called Biona, where we take the biochar and upgrade it for anode material for sodium-ion batteries. That's kind of niche application, but it kind of feels quite good because it's a significant value add. I find it a bit tricky in the biochar area because it is essentially quite low value when we don't have the CDR credit. And then things like the transportation and logistics become really quite difficult. And I'm just wondering whether you have any viewpoints on alternative applications other than applying it to fields, and then the aspect of modularity, how close do you have to be to where the biomass is actually harvested and then repurposed as biochar, or whether we can be centralized, which is the typical route for scaling up.
Can I answer that question? Maybe Luis, you can talk about your experience later. That's a great question. Yeah, there are logistics and supply chain challenges both on upstream and downstream. So collecting the biomass and then distributing the product. I think the scale is possible more in agriculture, which is why we cannot ignore it. Although there are many other applications like batteries, you said. And there are other byproducts like bio oil. You guys are using the bio oil as a sustainable maritime fuel. Some people are producing wood vinegar, which is a natural pesticide. And I was in Kenya a few months back, and I was told by one of the leading developers there that the wood vinegar is greater demand. People are willing to pay premium on the wood vinegar than the biochar. It's a byproduct. So all of this have to be capitalized for making the whole operation feasible and profitable. And in a country like India, which is very decentralized, I think the downstream solution is easier, in my opinion. Biochar companies should sell the biochar as a B2B product to fertilizer companies who have the distribution and branding and marketing ability. They should not get into the business of selling this to the farmer. They will not succeed most probably. So just tie up with one or two large fertilizer companies who are willing to, once they are willing to buy this and make a portfolio, and I talked about why they are not doing it. And the upstream challenge is really difficult. So for that, I think what Mashmix has done is smart, which is rather than procuring agriculture biomass, you are actually buying, using food processing biomass, which is cashew shell. So something which is more centralized, like from rice mill, you can use rice husk rather than using the paddy straw from farmers, which is more difficult. So as central as you can go, the better it is for you. Otherwise, you may have to have a decentralized production model, which is also quite viable in countries like India, like Takachar is doing that, and they are one of the X Prize finalists.
Perfect. I'd like to to add with my own experience. As for starting with the application, we are aware of many other possibilities around, but as a mission, our first mission, of course, is combating climate change through removal. But being based in Brazil, we also have big responsibility to tackle two other problems Brazil itself has. First, we are extremely dependent on importation of both mineral fertilizer. The figure that I have access says that 85% the fertilizer used in Brazil is imported, and it's one of the main costs of the crops here. Also, we have about 100 million hectares to be restored. So naturally, our goal is to help to tackle these challenges using the biochar as management. The second point, the sourcing and application distance, right? There was an important matter for us, and it was an imperative point to decide where we are going to place our base. So we structure in a way that we intend to source within a maximum 100 kilometers and apply within 200 kilometers maximum.
We've probably got time for one more question. See any hands in the audience? I'll ask one question if that's okay. So Trevor, before he left, talked about win-wins, but we're always keen to learn and to look at things that didn't go quite as well. So in your experience in your time in the biochar sector, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned? I'll start with you, Luis.
I've touched before in this panel. I think the main challenge now is technology maturity. It's holding up many of our biochar producers.
I am not in the business of biochar, so people like him and can actually talk about what are the real challenges, but I can see that the co-benefits have to be monetized, measured and monetized, particularly in global south where governments are not yet ready to invest in removal because they have a long way to go, first of all, to activate decarbonization. Right? And developing economies have to balance growth and environment and climate in a smart manner. So unlike Denmark, which has gone ahead and formed this GONE alliance because they put a target for CDR as part of their NDC target, those things will happen in countries like India, but it's going to take time, not in the next 5 to 10 years. But the story on agriculture, the story on construction industry is very solid. So that I think the co-benefit monetization, realization, acknowledgement, building evidence and eventual monetization through policy support is very, very critical.
Thank you, Assistant. And I think that brings us to time. So thank you very much to the audience and to our panel members, to Assistant, to Louise and to Trevor. Thank you very much. Please do check out our white paper, the Biochar Blueprint, on our website and enjoy the rest of the COP. Thank you very much.